Welcome to WPTV, and I'm Marlena Fitzpatrick. I organized this Francesca Cernas-loving Immigrant Arts and Women's Empowerment Summit. It started yesterday with the wonderful Kimberly Locke and the all-immigrant band, Cosmopolis Collective, conducted by the very, very talented Korean violinist Sita Chay. And today we're talking about immigration policies. We're also talking about diversity. We're having a creative writing workshop. We're having an immigrant artist visas workshop. We are talking about cultural identity. And we're talking about American culture, because we are all Americans, but we also all are immigrants. We all need to stand in solidarity. And I'm happy to announce that this is the second summit. And I'm happy to announce that we had a wonderful, great panel of union members, labor workers, cultural workers that are standing in solidarity with all immigrant artists in the United States of America. Thank you.
Good.
2 and 1. Great. I got it. This one?
Yep.
Comes the second fabulous panel, and I hope you all understand the level of epic and honored and humbled we are with the presence of these individuals. This is diversity in media when institutions implement change and foster diversity. Okay. So we have a great panel that comprises of unions and corporate and nonprofit institution. Let me introduce you to our fabulous moderator, Antoine. She is a coalition member, executive director of the Workmen's Circle since June 2008. She's a lifelong progressive activist whose grandparents met at a union hall. And, excuse me, sorry. Okay. And she's a trained attorney and previously served as the assistant executive director at the Writers Guild of America. Welcome in.
Adam, how long have we known each other now? I don't know. It's been at least 15 years, is it? No.
Probably.
At least.
Yes.
My writer's guild, yeah.
Let me tell you a little bit about Adam Moore.
Oh, Adam. I thought
You too. But you too.
Sorry.
But I have millions of stories with Adam Moore, but I'm just not gonna do that. Thanks. Adam Moore is a good friend of mine, and we had the opportunity to work together before merger of the Screen Actors Guild, now SAG-AFTRA, and he's the national director of EEO and diversity for Screen Actors Guild and AFTRA. And welcome Rebecca Damon, the New York president, sitting right there. Thank you for coming. Since 2005, he has led the union's Equality and Inclusion Plan of Action Strategy to realize the union's responsibility to its members and staff in ensuring safe, respectful workplaces, free of unlawful harassment and discrimination through the industry. Thank you, Adam Moore, for being here. I adore your boots.
Oh, thank you.
I have to say.
I have 200 pair.
Val Nicholas is an award-winning television marketing and program production executive, Vice President and Creative Director of NBC News, and we are starstruck for him to be here. We are excited. Thank you, Val, for being here with us. Jenna. Yes, Jenna Cresfonte currently serves as the Director of Community Engagement at the Dramatists Guild of America. We did an event with them earlier this year, very fabulous, and has worked for Global Affairs Canada, the French Ministry of National Education, and for the State and City of New York. Thank you, Jenna. And last but certainly not least, Tom Carpenter. How are you? Long time no see. Is the Eastern Regional Director and General Counsel for Actors Equity Association. And in that role, he has a responsibility for overseeing the administration of the union's exchange agreements with performing arts unions in other countries, as well as immigration and visa issues. Thank you, Tom. And I leave you with this fabulous panel.
Okay, thank you, and welcome. We have a pretty broad topic here, but I think one that couldn't be more relevant as a model today as we're looking to build and enhance diversity in the arts. The question and the panel was created to discuss how diversity can be used as a frame of reference and a driver of artistic creation and cultural workers' protection. The interesting piece here is there's models of management side and union side workers working together to enhance diversity. And further than that, I think there's some takeaways where we can interact with the audience, with you, our audience, to talk about ways that you can actually affect change in diversity in the arts. So I'm going to introduce each of the panelists and ask them to speak about their work and areas that pertain to this, and then we'll start framing how action can be taken to actually change the diversity in the arts and media. So I'm going to start just for my left and ask Val to speak about NBC News and what's going on there.
Thank you. Diversity is one of the things that I do besides being a producer and vice president and whatnot, is I'm also vice president of multicultural initiatives. And one of the things I found in corporate America is nobody does anything because it's the right thing to do. They do it because you can make a business argument around it. And for us, when Comcast was buying NBC, part of the deal was, you know, we had all these ERGs, which are employee resource groups. We had an African American one, LGBT, a women's network, veterans network, a bunch of other things, and they had none. And they had like over 100,000 employees. So one of the things that regular folks can do that became very active with their Congress people on making sure that diversity was part of the deal in order for them to buy NBC News. And so the Congress mandated that stuff, and the next thing I know, I'm in Philadelphia helping them start up employee resource groups, which now they outnumber us on that, and it's become a part of the fabric of that company. But in terms of making a business argument, I got the multicultural initiatives job because I made a business argument that basically news is a shrinking pool. And we've been trying to steal share from ABC and CBS and all those people in a shrinking pool. So even if you win, you lose. And my argument was there's $1 trillion African-American audience out there. There's $1 trillion Hispanic audience out there. There's almost $1 trillion LGBT audience out there. There are all these Asian-American audiences, all of these audiences that are underserved. And so the fact of the matter is you have to put people in front of the camera, you have to put people behind the camera, you have to put people in the executive suite where I am who look like me, where decisions are being made. And if you can make that argument as a business argument, then, and prove it, one of the ways we proved it is we started some verticals, we call them. They're just these sites within NBCnews.com. NBC Latino, NBC BLK, NBC Out, NBC Asian American, and these things not only funnel stories that would have got lost because you only got 22 minutes nightly news. They would have got lost, but they get covered by those, and they cycle into Today and MSNBC and NBC. But by having those there, not only do they cycle stories in, but they cycle in new writers and new producers and new faces. So the trick on all of this is, if you want any of this stuff to happen, you have to go as high as you can in the company to get somebody to buy into it. And for us, it's a guy named David Cohen, who's the number 2 at all of Comcast. And he bought in, and he's made it part of his deal. And everybody who's underneath him are not gonna piss off David. And so when he takes it seriously, they take it seriously.
Thank you. And Jenna, why don't you continue the story from the Dramatists Guild's perspective?
I joined the Dramatists Guild last October, and when I was in the interview room with Lisa Crone, the chair of our political engagement committee, and with Tina Fallon, our executive director of creative affairs, I was very straightforward with them. I said, listen, I'm a rabble-rousing misanthrope. If you bring me on board, I'm not going to be your token black person that makes you feel good about yourself. I don't have it within me. Because in the times that we're living in 2018, doesn't work. It simply does not work. Just to have this black person who smiles and agrees with you, I can't do it for anyone. It's just not gonna happen. And what does that mean? And just to their credit, they said, when can you start? They really did. They said, when can you start? And when I came to the Dramatists Guild, and a lot of the times in our board meetings, they do have staff attend from time to time, in our committee meetings and our staff meetings. We have tough conversations because a lot of their assumptions aren't really grounded in fact. It's just things that they loved. I was born in Haiti. A perfect example. One of our staff trainings was to go see Once on This Island. I guess people like that. But I was born in Haiti, and I found it atrocious, deeply offensive and atrocious. I was like, this was, it wasn't even cultural appropriation. I thought it was cultural bastardization. And for me, the takeaway from that was I had to tell my bosses that what they had designed at the training program was completely inadequate. Just because there are black and brown faces on that stage doesn't mean that this is going to sort of, or in some way, edify the staff. Because I was there as a Haitian person, I said, oh no, this can't work. And that's what I've done day by day at the Guild, to make sure that we are not looking at this as a top-down administration, that our ideas are coming from our members. So what I tell my board members, what I tell my supervisors is, listen, we're going to take our direction from our members. Last fall, Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico and it hit the Virgin Islands. Our members came to us and said, what can we do? We developed a partnership with the Children's Theater, and we flew up 5 Puerto Rican playwrights, and we had their plays read at the Children's Theater. Introduced them to, we paired them with directors, with New York City-based actors, and now and they were telling their own stories, not something that we had imposed or that we expected from them. We let them speak for themselves. We as the Dramatists, we never pretend to speak for the members of the Puerto Rican community. We can't do that. But we can help them come up here and put the microphone in front of them and in front of a room of people like you who have a say and who have access to more people. And then other things. For example, when our current president called certain countries shitholes, I'm not going to censor because he didn't censor it. We had Haitian playwrights who are currently members of our guild come up and present their work and respond and give their perception of, what was the history of this child and everything else. And it's just this thing where we think, okay, we're going to work with women, we're going to work with these different minority groups. But last week was our national conference, and we're in the middle of this room, and I'm on a panel discussion, and this gentleman raises his hand in the back, and then he says, I've heard all this conversation about diversity and inclusion and women and minorities with his interpreter speaking on his behalf. He's like, what is the Dramatists Guild doing for members of the community? It hit me hard. I'm deeply sorry. We have not done enough. But please, let's speak afterwards. And now we're going to set up an entire fall program. We've already reached out to different people, and that's what it is for me. Diversity is listening when we don't get it right and correcting it and moving it forward. So this whole idea that we're gonna go in and they're gonna know, they're not gonna know until someone tells you like, you know what, this wasn't good. And then we just apologize and we move forward. So that's what I'm doing for the Guild, listening to our members when we don't get it right and trying to move forward.
Thank you. Okay, Tom, you're on talking about what Actors Equity's been doing, and you have some interesting programs that people can actually access online.
Absolutely. So Actors Equity, as you may know, is we're a national labor union. We represent actors who work in live theater and live performance, and we also represent stage managers. We have been, the Council of Actors Equity, which is our national governing body, has really made diversity a priority, and we are kind of unusual in the arts and entertainment industry to the extent that every contract that our members sign comes through our office and goes into our system. So we have really data that is industry-wide about how actors are being paid, including those actors who have agents and attorneys that are negotiating overscale payments for them. And so we determined to use that data to try to figure out what is the landscape for women and people of color who are working in live performance and theater. And what we found was that women and members of the union who are of color have fewer work opportunities, and when they do get hired, they are often hired on lower paying contracts. So just to give you some of that data, women are underrepresented in plays. They make up only 35% of the contracts that are awarded. In musicals, only 42% of the contracts, and in terms of stage managers on Broadway, only 37% of the contracts go to women. Caucasians make up a majority of all on-stage contracts. In plays, 65% of contracts go to Caucasians. In musicals, 66%, and in the chorus, 57% of contracts. African American members reported salaries 10% lower than the average white principal in a play. And a stunning 77% of stage manager contracts on Broadway and national tours, 77% went to Caucasians. Over 3 years, there were only 6 contracts that were given to African American stage managers. We have put the study is available on our website. The data set is available on our website as well. So if people really want to get in there and kind of dig into the data, we've made that available. And one of the reasons that we've made that available is because we have had very robust language in our union contracts for many, many years about discrimination, about non-traditional casting, and about protection from harassment and bullying. And yet, those problems are still endemic in our industry. And it's clear to us that if there's going to be a meaningful solution to a complex problem, it's going to have to be a solution that exists in the entire industry, because a union with the best intentions can negotiate the strongest possible contract language, and we've been doing that for years and years and years, and it has not made a difference to the people that it's intended to serve and protect. So we have launched a campaign called Change the Stage, which is an offshoot of this study, to engage our membership and in a conversation with the larger industry about what we can do to change the way our industry functions, so that people can go into the audience in a theater and see their lives reflected in a respectful way on the stage, because there's no incentive now for people of color or women to go to the theater if they're not going to see stories that they relate to, that speak to who they are, and that speak to our culture and our country in a way that's in its broadest form. So that initiative is ongoing, and we welcome any of you to participate. And you can find more information about it on our website.
So Adam, why don't you round out this the information part of this session by talking about SAG-AFTRA and what you guys are doing around the EEOC.
Yes, thank you. So I work for SAG-AFTRA, Screen Actors Guild, American Federation of Television and Radio Artists. We like to say that it's 160,000 people who inform and entertain the world. Right? It's the people who make their living on camera or behind the microphone. So much like Tom at Actors Equity, we're the labor union that negotiates minimum wages and working conditions in those work environments. Entertainment, things that you would think of, but also news and broadcast and sound recording artists. In a nutshell, right, it's more and better jobs for people who work in our jurisdiction, which includes not only U.S. citizens, but also people who come to this country, as you might imagine, a lot, looking to work in these industries on camera and behind a microphone. In the EEO and diversity world that I have the pleasure to lead, we're looking for more and better jobs specifically for those from communities who haven't had a chance to compete for those jobs in the same way that people from the typical homogenous groups of people who make most of these decisions are from. Right? A lot of times the people who are making these decisions are not interested in telling other stories. We were talking about this earlier. What we're trying to do as a labor union is not only make sure that the work environment people go in is safe and free of harassment, free of discrimination, free of those things that keep people from safely working or pursuing that work, but ultimately what we're also trying to do is make them make different decisions, right, about what they're going to make, who is going to be in it when they make it. So it's trying to get at people throughout the food chain, from script to screening, from the people who are deciding what news stories are going to be covered and who gets to tell those stories, making sure that there's intentional inclusion from the beginning, and as Val said, making sure it's not just an appeal to the altruistic or the righteous, right? It's what's best for business, right? Trying to demonstrate that it's actually dollars and eyeballs, and it's in their best interest to actually tell stories that we haven't seen before from communities that we rarely see depicted, and if we do, they're maybe appropriated or misappropriated or bastardized, right? Actually hearing, I see Kia here, I mean, hearing from people, authentic voices from the community who are actually telling universal stories that aren't just limited to, well, I'm a black playwright, and so that means that I'm just appealing to this audience, or this is a Chinese film, and so that's just a Chinese audience. That's not what this is about. We were working the other week with the Asian American International Film Festival and talking to the filmmaker of a very small family story that's very specific to hers. It's this Chinese community in Canada. It's a very specific story. But it's the most universally relatable story you've ever seen. I thought it was just my grandma used to wash the picture wall. You guys have the wall of pictures in your house, and grandma used to wash that wall. I thought it was just my grandma. Apparently it's everybody's grandma who does that, right? It's that kind of stuff, right? Where these really small, specific stories that actually teach us about ourselves, that we learn about things that are outside of our own communities in a way that you never would. Because a lot of us learn about one another, for better or worse, from our screens. Right, from what we hear, what we see, what we interact with on the ubiquitous screens that we are exposed to all of the time, and who shows up there and who doesn't, and how those people and those families and those relationships and those power dynamics, and who has what, who doesn't, and how that's depicted on our screens turns out actually matters to us as people, and whether or not we actually value ourselves, value one another, value those immigrant stories that we see. How are those told? Is it just a tragedy repeating itself over and over that I can't do anything about? Or is there something that I can actually take away from these stories that people are telling about what I can do? So we try to incentivize people wherever possible, whether it's financially in some of our contracts to actually include faces and voices from underrepresented communities, or it's simply getting our own members to a place where they can compete for those jobs, whether you're not here in New York City, LA, or in a reservation in South Dakota. The technology is going to allow you to compete for jobs and tell stories in a way that has never happened before. And that convergence of technology and the storytelling and sort of the elimination, or at least maybe the relegation on some level of the traditional greenlighters and gatekeepers about what gets made, you get to make these decisions, right? Because you can make it, you can distribute it, you can edit it on a phone, and you can find audiences, and you can find those dollars and eyeballs, so that HBO comes and knocks on your door and says, I'm gonna come take your phone, because clearly you're telling a story that's tapping into something, where NBC is gonna say, you clearly have a pulse of what's going on in the community, and And so let's find a way to give you a bigger platform to respond to what I think what we're seeing is a greater level of demand from audiences for authenticity, for these universal stories that we haven't often seen, and now you can actually make good on that demand by communicating to the advertisers, the producers, the people who make this stuff, and tell them, with your dollars and eyeballs, am I gonna go to that opening weekend for that movie or not? Am I gonna tweet about this pilot that I think that everybody in the world should see or not? Because, Once on This Island apparently was not a good idea, and you could have very well let not just your bosses know about that, but the people who made it could conceivably make a different decision.
That's an interesting point, not to cut you off, but the idea
That's fine.
of, incentivizing something, they made millions. Sort of like Chef Boyardee. We all know that's not good Italian food. They made millions. They continue to make millions. So, sometimes that argument of the money argument doesn't work because they make money. Like Chef Boyardee, we all know Chef Boyardee.
No,
is not
fair
good
enough.
Italian
And
food.
we are asking to make different decisions, but they're made a ton of money making these same decisions over and over and over again. And so you have to make a case for why they have to change the way they go about it.
It's not easy for Roni anymore.
Well, how do we make that case? And that's because it's we only have a short amount of time. I'd like to leave I'd like to leave this panel with some takeaways, how we can affect change. And I know it is, it's this is only the beginning of a conversation and of action. But do each of you have ideas of the takeaway, how we can diversify stage and screen and television
You have
where does the power come from and how do we use it?
You have all the power. What we put on television, we have 95 different platforms at NBC Universal, and I've worked everywhere from NBC Entertainment to NBC News to MSNBC, all around. I have friends at Bravo, I have friends at the theme parks, and everything that we do, particularly these days, because of social media and your following, you can shut down a movie. Scarlett Johansson was just about to do a movie as a trans person, and that community stood up and said no. And guess what? She's not doing that movie. So, in time in history, you have more power than you have ever had in terms of shaping the way media works. When I first got to NBC Entertainment, I was in the advertising and promotion department, and they took me around. There was 120 people there, and they said, what do you think? And I said, it's great, but there's nobody who looks like me. And they said, yeah, you know what? We're hoping you'd help us with that. We can't find any black writers. So I spent a week going to all the comedy clubs in Los Angeles. Anybody who was funny, I gave them a card and said, you want to come write for us? And within like 2 weeks, I had 5 writers in. So there's always a way to do it, but the conventional wisdom is what kills you. Black Panther, for example. It was a third movie in history to make over $700 million domestically. The conventional wisdom of Black Panther is black movies don't play around the world, so don't release them around the world. Get Out, the same sort of deal. But you guys are making the case now, and for all of our businesses, the thing to remember is we're in a global business now. It's not just the United States. There's a reason Fast and Furious has one of every flavor in that cast, because it's going to play in Latin America, and it's going to play in Europe, and it's going to play in Asia. So just bear in mind the power is in your hands and the people who follow you.
So Jenna, can you assign some activism to the audience today?
Well, I think honestly, I agree with Val, it's in supporting good work. There are plenty of things that aren't worthwhile, but if you take that time, and sometimes the cheaper tickets, Broadway tickets can be so expensive, but sometimes the show that's off-Broadway, off-Broadway, different places, just to support them, a lot of times just getting there and showing up, I think that will sort of create the momentum that we need. If we look at Hamilton, the way that people show up for that play, that musical, it really is changing the color of, literally changing the color of Broadway, of the Great White Way, as they call it.
Yeah, I would just agree with that. I think it is a diversity exists and it's an ecosystem. So our members get hired based on the parts that are written. So when playwrights write plays that speak to a diverse cast or better roles for women, that means that those roles are cast with diverse actors and more women. If a casting agent is part of the conversation and understands the need and the value, that casting agent might seek to put somebody in a role that there's no reason that someone who is Asian or African American or Latinx couldn't play that role, but and yet they wouldn't normally get that job. So it's got to be the entire industry has to have a commitment to doing the right thing, and that's where I think Actors Equity is hoping to lead the discussion.
Is Equity working at all with the audience, with the people who are actually attending the shows?
Not so much with audiences, but we have partnered with LORD, which is the League of Resident Theaters. Those are the larger not-for-profit theaters around the country. So like Arena Stage in DC, the Goodman in Chicago, Berkeley Rep, the Alliance in Atlanta, the Alley in Houston. Those large theaters, we have been engaging with them in a conversation about when they're developing new works, how are they choosing what types of plays to develop? Because a lot of times those are the theaters where the canon is created, and if the canon doesn't include women and people of color, that's a problem, not just for the industry, but for our society.
And before we close with Adam, I wanted to ask you a further question. Jenna, do you have any recommendations how people can, because sometimes, the Hamiltons take up a lot of space, but there's this enormous wealth of the off-Broadway plays and musicals. How do people find them?
Well, the same way that you find anything, right? You go and you talk to people you know, you look at the newspapers, you can go on different social media platforms. What I do, for example, when I look at things, especially like in other cultures, I usually find a person I love. So I'll find an actor or an actress that I love, and I'll say, well, like in German, I love to practice my German, but it's not very good. So what I'll do is Daniel Bruhl is a German actor, and I'll kind of go through his Wikipedia and look at his work, and that helps me kind of say, oh, I can learn about German culture through this. So I would say if you like a certain kind of culture, you find it intriguing, start with an actor or writer or director, whichever. Remember what was his name, the Spanish director who did all those movies with Penelope. Yes, right? Remember when that came out? We didn't know anything about her. We were like, him. Every time his movie came out, everyone went to go see them. So that's what I do. I find an actor or a director or a writer that I like, and I kind of look at all their work, and then I think,
That's like the Denzel Washington movies. For us, we don't even know the name of the movie. We just say, give me 2 tickets to Denzel.
So Adam, why don't you wrap this up and give us some takeaways and what the audience can do?
Well, I think for me, and I tend to think that hearing from these people, I think they would probably agree. When we're talking about diversity, or we're talking about inclusion, or about equity, we're talking about not skipping to the checking of the box, right? And what demographics do we have or not have? You have to start, I think, from diversity of thought, diversity of experience, and perspective. And wherever you may sit, I think one thing to think about is, especially in this community, where you may think, I got this, right? I'm pretty woke, right? Everybody around me is pretty good. Like I know some people, but you walk into a room and sometimes you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't think about the deaf community. I didn't think about the trans community, or wherever you don't come from, right? We all come from different places, but recognize that maybe we don't know it all, and to actually actively seek out those people who might know those things, and to ask the question, to raise the hand and say, I don't know, right? It's really hard to say, I don't know. I don't know there's anything harder than that, and then ask for help, right? And do it intentionally, do it up front, and really make sure you're making, it's not saying you have equal access, but going out and finding people, going to the comedy clubs, testing the assumptions, really inviting people in. There's gonna be tension, right? You're not gonna learn anything unless there's tension. It's how you know you're learning something. If you're not feeling a little tense about it, you're not actually learning anything. And so inviting that kind of intentional inclusion in, and really making good on it, sort of all the way through structure, whatever power you may have, to make sure that people get paid equally if they're doing the same amount of work, right? So you don't have these statistics that Tom rattled off, where even people, maybe the jobs increase and the number of jobs increase, but you're not actually making the money, because you're a woman, because you're a person of color, because you have a disability. So wherever you may sit to be able to influence or to make some of those decisions about structural equity, I say do it. And then, like everybody else said, it's show the love really loud for the stuff that's good, right? It's easy to hate on stuff and show people the things that don't work, but a lot of people are looking for a roadmap and a path to what's possible. Well, show them what's possible. I mean, I remember Passing Strange, right? So I remember when I saw that off Broadway at the Public, and was like, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life. I can't believe, and if without the people who went to that over and over again and then made the Public essentially, well, let's go try that on Broadway, and let's go, like without those things, I don't think you have Hamilton. I don't think you have these institutions who have to think differently about the way that they go about doing things that then give other people a chance. And so at the time, I think that I remember sitting on the Bertel committee and no one wanted to give that an award. And I was like, this is nuts, this is the best thing. But if you show people, I think, and you really stay persistent at it and really call attention to the good work, different decisions will be made and people will feel that they can actually go make some of that in a way that they hadn't before.
Thank you, and thank you for being part of this conversation. I believe now is lunch. Lunch workshop. Yes. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Nice to meet you.
Great.